And thank you for joining us today here at Alliance Solutions Group to learn more about modern construction financials and Sage Intacct. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the history and where kind of Sage started back with Timberline. A lot of you, I think, are on Sage 300, which was formerly called Timberline. Sage acquired Timberline back in the early 2000s, and that was with their journey into the construction space. They also acquired Sage 100 Contractor, which some of you may be on as well. Um, that was formerly called Master Builder. And then recently, Sage has acquired Sage Intacct, and this is their product that they are looking towards the future to move them to the cloud. And so all of these products, Sage 300, Sage 100, and now Sage Intacct make up the construction division. And we now have Sage Intacct for construction, which we're going to talk about today, which is Sage's path to the cloud for clients that want to be in the cloud. Sage is also, all of this is led up to how we can provide you with a product that can begin to evolve your business to the cloud, not only with the financials, but also we've partnered with several different partners. A lot of them you may be familiar with, like Procore or TimberScan. Procore will be for our general contractors to extend and have project management solutions. We've also partnered with Hyphen Solutions for the residential builders, and then Workforce Go for payroll, as well as TimberScan for paperless, really rounding out the offering for you. Now, in our webinar today, we're going to talk about what do modern financials look like. So a lot of us want to see access to our data, be able to drill down and get to that data easily, and it to be real-time data, not something that I've exported to Excel that I'm having to manipulate. Maybe I want to be able to have that data delivered automatically. I want to be able to easily export to Excel, not have to reformat my information every time I send it out. I want to have dashboard views. I want to be able to look at my data in different ways. I want to also be able to consolidate my information and not have to bring it out to Excel to do that consolidation. I also want to be able to, on the fly, make filtering changes. I want to filter by maybe a certain project manager or a division of the company without having to run a new report. And I want an easy report writer, something that I can do myself. And I want a flexible work breakdown structure, something that gives me room to grow and room to provide that flexibility in my reports. Now, where can I get all that? Well, with Sage Intacct, I can get those dynamic dashboards. Now, so many times right now I talk to users, and a lot of them are still doing reports outside in Excel. We all know the pain of using Excel spreadsheets to do reporting. It's exporting data, creating reports, and then having to constantly update that because as soon as I export, that data has become old and stale. Now, with Sage Intacct, we're going to see a flexible modern general ledger. So for some of you, you may be happy with your chart of accounts. It may be adequate, but for others, you're looking for more. You're looking for subsidiary ledgers you can access, multiple books that you can have a tax book. You can also have statistical journals that you can track statistical information that you can report on. Things that you maybe are doing outside in Excel or in an Access database or some other form of reporting, and you'd like to be able to do that all within your own native accounting solution. So with Intacct utilizes dimensions, and we're going to start to talk about dimensions throughout this process. And dimensions is really what really gives this product the flexibility. First, we start with our work breakdown structure, and we've mimicked what's in Sage. Sage has a job. We call it a project in Intacct. We can have a child project. We can have a task, which is going to be like a cost code or a cost code. And then we can have a cost type. Now, what does that look like? Well, here's our work breakdown structure where we have a project, then we may have a cost code like concrete, then underneath that, we may have a category like labor, materials, and then we can have another category underneath that if we need to. This really gives us a lot of flexibility to roll all this information up and then break it out into different categories. And we'll see that when we start to look at Sage Intacct. Now, also what makes up our modern financials is the ability to consolidate. And we want to do that quickly and easily. We want to be able to do that in minutes, not in days. And so we are going to be able to build out an organizational structure like you see here in this example where you've got multiple different companies and maybe sub-companies underneath that, divisions. We want to be able to roll that all up to a consolidated view but then also break it down and look at it on individual levels. And we're going to be able to do all of that in Intacct. And then lastly, be able to see project profitability and further dashboarding. So we'll take a look at some of the dashboards that are available in Intacct. So with that, let's hop into Intacct. So let's look at what a modern financial solution looks like. Right now, we're looking at our Sage Intacct. I'm on one of the many dashboards that are available. It has a very modern user interface. It's all web-based. That's one of the benefits of Sage Intacct. I don't have to have a server. I just need to have access to a browser, and it can be any type of browser, and I can log into my product. Sage Intacct also does 4 updates a year that they automatically update the system. So you simply come in, and you're on the new version. No more IT having to do updates, you having to schedule this off hours. We're going to do that automatically for you. Now, so many times we're used to in our current systems of running reports to see data. I want to know what's going on with cash, let me run a report. I want to know what's going on with the project, let me run a report. But with modern financial solutions, we're going to start to change that because we can get that information in a dashboard view. So here I'm looking at a financial dashboard. A lot of information that I'm quickly able to scan, and my eyes are drawn to the arrows. I can tell quickly if there's changes to key areas that are important to me. Decrease in our cash, increase in AP, my EBITDA has increased. Things that are important to me, I can call out right on my dashboard. And what's great about it is it's all real-time data. So if I've got questions, well, I can just drill into this data by clicking on it. And I can see that information, where the change came from. Now, these dashboards are customizable. So as a user, I can come in here and add in additional components, as well as remove components that aren't important to me. So I may start off with a company provided dashboard and then begin to make modifications to it. I also can have charts and graphs. So depending on what's important for me to see and how to see it, it may be these performance cards. It may be something like a report that I like to see on my desktop. Or maybe I like the charts that my eyes easily drawn to when I can quickly read what's going on without having to analyze a report. Now, I mentioned that we can do multiple entities. Now, this dashboard I'm looking at is actually a consolidation of multiple companies. If you look at the top of my screen, you see that it says top level. What the top level is in Sage Intacct is a consolidated view of all of my companies. So if I click on this drop down, I see that I've got multiple companies that sit within this company or this database. So in some systems, this means I've got to switch in and out to go to a particular database. If I wanted to switch into this residential company, I'd have to log out of this one and go into the other one. But with Sage Intacct, with the top level, I'm able to do transactions across all these companies without having to leave. I'm not having to use complicated account numbers with prefixes. I'm simply able to specify the specific company I'm coding to and maybe a secondary division that I'm coding to as well. Now, if I'm a user and I'm restricted to accessing just one of these companies, well, I can log in specifically to a company, and then everything that I do in that company is going to be for that company. So now I'm in this residential company, and now my dashboard is completely changed, and it's based on just this company. And so this also gives me some additional security that I can restrict users by company. So instead of having to create completely separate data folders that are their own separate islands, I can have them all within the same structure, and me as the controller or CFO can run consolidated reports, being at the top level, but individual users can be restricted to the particular companies that they have access to. So with having the consolidated view and having our multiple companies all within this one database, this also allows me to perform intercompany transactions. And with Intacct, I can build out what my intercompany looks like. Here's all my different companies. I can set up what that structure is, what due to and due from accounts each one posts to. Then, when I make transactions, behind the scenes, Sage is going to perform all those due to, due froms for me automatically. I can even have a dashboard or an eliminations company to clear out all those entries. But let's go back to our dashboard that we were looking at. Now, because I'm at the top level and I'm looking at this consolidated view, perhaps I want to see just a particular company's status. What's going on in our GC company? Now, I could, of course, switch into that company by changing it, but I also can begin to utilize those dimensions that we talked about a little bit ago. The dimensions are really tags, things that I can tag a transaction with that I can then filter by. So I can simply come up to my dashboard and select that particular dimension. In this case, I'm going to pick this GC company and apply that filter to it. When I apply it, it refreshes my dashboard and provides me information just on that particular company. So it's filtered out all the other companies for me. I didn't have to switch into another company. I didn't have to run a report to do that. I simply just added in the filter. Now I also can filter by date. So perhaps I want to go back in time. I want to look at something months ago or last month or last year. I can simply change the date and refilter. So we'll change this. We'll go forward back to, since I'm already in the past. We'll jump up here to September. I can apply this filter and now it's refiltered this information for that date. You see all my numbers have changed now. So I can quickly filter through my information, pulling out exactly what I need in just seconds, as you saw. Now, other information that may be helpful on my dashboard are reports. You see I've got a couple of reports listed here, as well as this chatter. And this is something very unique to Sage Intacct. Chatter is communication within the software. So right now, if we've got a question for a colleague or our manager, we typically maybe attach a PDF of a report, email it to a colleague, or just simply send an email asking a question. They respond, and we do that hundreds and hundreds of times a month. So then when there's a question on a transaction, sometimes it's extremely difficult to find that because we have so much communication back and forth with our managers and colleagues. But with Intacct, I'm able to make that entry right inside the transaction. So if I drill into this particular transaction, when I've got a question and I'm in my transaction, in this example, this is releasing some retainage, I can make a note about that transaction. Now everybody knows when I made it, who made it, and what the thought process was behind it. So imagine we have got journal entries that we're making some adjustments and there's some reasoning behind the journal entry we made. I can put in the chatter that information. Maybe I want to get that approved by somebody. I could put that comment in there, have my manager comment back, and now I've got that dialogue all maintained in that journal entry for me to look at years and years from now. Now this chatter can be public, so it could sit on my dashboard like we saw here in this example, or it could be private. And what's great about it is when you get that chatter that pops up for you, you can simply click on the link and it drills you right down into that transaction. And you can even comment back on it. Now, looking at reports, we talked about how we can drill down. So if I want to look at details behind a transaction, anytime I see a hyperlink, I can drill into that transaction. It gives me the general ledger report behind it. And then if I want to go down further and see the actual transaction, well, I can just simply click on the dollar amount and it's going to drill me down further into the transaction. In this case, it was a batch of bills, and I can get to my accounts payable invoice here. So here I see my AP invoice. I see that it's not been paid yet. It's overdue. I see that there's nothing that's been paid on it yet. And if I am using approvals, well, I see that I can look at my approval history of who entered the invoice, when it was approved, who it was approved by, the date it was approved. And if we had attached a document, an image of the invoice, well, I can also drill right in and view that document that I attached. So I was able to go from that dashboard view of a transaction all the way down to the source transaction with just a couple of clicks and then work my way back up to the top. Now with reports I always get asked, I have a certain report I like, I want to make a customization to a report, and sometimes we simply find it's easier to do it out in Excel because it's quicker, it's something we understand and we're comfortable with. But with Sage Intacct's Financial Report Writer, you're going to find that you are going to be able to come in here and make modifications to reports that live inside of Sage and that you can run anytime you want. So why don't we drill down and take a look at a report? I'm going to back up a little bit here to a date and time. So if we're looking at just our basic income statement here, we see we've got some revenue. Maybe we want to know how that revenue, where that revenue is coming from. Is it coming from, which jobs is it coming from? Now, to do that in some systems, I'd have to go run a couple of different reports, maybe pull it out to Excel, but with Intacct, I can drill down into my report, and this is my report wizard. So when I first come into this screen, I could, and I'm not sure what to do here, I could drill into the help. Intacct Help Center has very cookbook-like and help information. So if I'm deciding to do this on a Sunday afternoon, I've got some steps to take me through. It takes me through step-by-step explaining the concepts, explaining the steps that I need to take. Now, reports are really just columns and rows, and that's what this wizard's going to take me through. So if I'm wanting to replicate this report and make modifications, I could start off by duplicating the report. Now, if I've gotten in here or somebody else has gotten in here and made some changes, I can also view the audit trail to see how this report changed since the last time I ran it. But we'll just stay with this existing report that's comparing my actual to my budget. So the first thing it brings up is all the rows. Now, here's all the potential rows that could show up of data, assuming I had data to show. And if we drill into one of these items, we see that we're asking to see some detail. Now, maybe we want to have a more summarized view, but we want to expand it by those dimensions. And so those dimensions, as we talked about, could be different companies. They could be projects. They could be departments, as you see. They could be customers. They could be vendors. So imagine being able to take your income statement that's a total of revenue and suddenly break it, explode it out by customer or explode it by project. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So I want to see the breakout of that revenue by project. Let me do these two items that would show. And so we're going to do by project. And we'll take a look at that here in a second. Now, the columns that are currently showing up are my actual cost, my budget, and then my variance. Now, these are modifiable by me as a user as well. And in plain, simple English, what do I want to show up in column 2? I want actual amounts to show up, or I want the budgeted amounts to show up. What reporting period am I looking for this report to be run on? Is it going to be run for just a month? Is it going to be run for the year? I can simply pick those choices here. Do I want it to expand out? Meaning, do I want it to show, month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, or do I just want it to show that 1 month? What books do I want showing? Now, I'm showing my accrual book. Maybe I have a tax book I want to layer in. I could do that. And I can also do some customizations to the view. Now, I could have what's called conditional formatting, where maybe I want to draw the user's eye or my eye to anything that's a 0 amount. And so that's the rule that I've set up here. Anything that equals 0, I want it to highlight in yellow. So I can call out things that are missing. So I could continue adding on additional columns if I wanted 3 months worth of data to show, and then it's a total, and then it's a compare to a variant, of the budget amount. I could do that. You design how many columns you want, or maybe you simply want to make this just actuals, and you could remove these 2 additional columns. We also can do calculations, simple calculations of saying column A minus column B, for example. And then we can decide who is going to have access to this report. Is this a report for everyone to view, or is this a report for just me to view? And then our last step will be, what do we want to do with this report? Is this a report that's now on my favorites list that I just run when I need it? Do I want to add it back to my dashboard? Do I want to have it scheduled to run? So once I've made these changes to this report, which I'll just go ahead and save that, and now I'm going to come back here to my dashboard and refresh it. Now, look what happened. That sales number that was originally just totaled up into one line has now been broken down by that dimension, which I pulled, which was the project dimension. So now I'm suddenly seeing my project information. So that's just how easy with a modern solution we can view our data. We can put the reports on our dashboard or just run our reports that we want to see, not having to export to Excel. But if we in fact do want to take those reports out to Excel, well, we do have the option to do that, because whenever we run a report, you will always see the option to export out to a Excel file right from the top of the screen. Now let's talk about how this looks like on the job costing side. So I'm going to look at a different dashboard, which was my project performance dashboard. So with my project performance dashboard, let me pop up here ahead a little bit into the current times. Just jump here to the end of the month. So here's a dashboard showing me all the different projects I've got going on. So I can quickly view them. Now, this dimension is a great way to filter that. Maybe I only want to look at projects for a certain company, my GC company. Now I've got a list of all my projects in the general construction company, all my commercial projects. Now, if you notice, I've got this particular project's got a couple of change orders. So I could even isolate this by a particular project. So if I switch into my general contractors company here, and I'm focused on it, maybe I want to look at just that particular project. And now this whole dashboard is going to be focused around that one particular project. Here's that Houston job with the 2 change orders. And then I can see contract amounts, commitments, all those details, as well as drill back into the details as we talked about. Now, where all this comes from is the structure we've set up. So if we take a look at our jobs to start with, this is the beginning of our work breakdown structure, is our jobs. So in setting up our projects, we can have unique project IDs. We can have parent-child relationships, as you see here, where we've got this parent job, and then we've got 2 child jobs. Let's go ahead and drill into a particular project, because this is where we will set up the details. So on my project screen, I can set up what the parent relationship is. I'm going to be able to see some project summary information like cost and budget totals, as well as the cost codes for this job, and then the project estimates. So within Intacct, I can have multiple estimates per project. This project has got 2 different estimates. So this allows me to have some audit control, tracking the history of the project budget. So I can build out my preliminary budget, and then as it progresses along the way, and maybe before I'm awarded the project, I may have a pre-award budget, and then when I've won the project, I can then convert that to my final budget. But I could have my whole history of all those budgets listed out here, and I can incorporate those into reports. I may choose to pull just the primary budget in my day-to-day reporting, but I may want to go back and do an analysis and compare it against prior budgets. Now, where the cost codes come from is where I can build out my master cost code list. Now, this is just some sample cost codes that we've built in this sample company, but as you can see, you've got a very flexible cost code structure. You can have multiple segments, you can use letters, you can use numbers, you can use dashes, you can use periods. So we're going to really be able to accommodate any type of cost code structure that you're going to need. So as we looked earlier in the presentation, talking about the relationship between cost code and cost types, if we take a look at a particular cost code like this concrete finishing down here and drill into the cost types, we can see the next layer down in the work breakdown structure. So we can code to a project, we can then code to a cost code, and then underneath that we can code to a cost type. And cost types can also have parent-child relationships. So you may choose to code all the way down to something like regular labor and break out fringes and burdens separately, but then all of that can roll up to labor, which then rolls up to the cost code and then eventually rolls up to the project. So we utilize all this information when coding transactions, whether that's setting up our purchase orders and subcontracts, whether that's when we're entering our accounts payable bills and coding our invoices to these jobs and to cost codes. But all this information then is pulled out in the form of reports in our dashboards. So I'll take a look at just a couple of job cost reports. So if we look at this report here, this is in another report writer that we have that's called our Interactive Custom Report Writer. Now I've picked a job here. I'm going to first hide this cost code column from us so we can see how it rolls up. So here I've got my job rolled up. I've got the project and then the two child projects are underneath it, letting me see my different change orders. Now I want to know more about this. Well, I can open this up and add in other details. Maybe I want to now add in that cost code. So now I'm expanding my jobs report. Now I'm seeing all of my cost code broken out. And I can continue expanding. Maybe I want to add in cost type, get more granular. I can do that here on the screen. Now, another report that maybe I want to run factors in some commitments, and that's my cost overview that's going to give me even more information. So this report is bringing in that not only that estimate, but those committed costs as well as actual costs, and I'm seeing budget variance. Again, all of these reports could be exported out to Excel as well as emailed out of the system too. So let's go back to our dashboard now that we've seen where some of these components come from on the project side. So with our modern financial solution, we're able to break our data down, slice and dice it, drill down to transactions as we saw. This project performance dashboard, I've already filtered by some of the dimensions that we have available in Intacct. I even have got chart and data views down here at the bottom. So in summary, my goal today was to introduce you to Sage Intacct in the powerful way that we can break out your data and provide you with a more modern view of your data. No more necessary needs to run just reports or to export that information out to Excel and build your own reports. You're going to be able to slice and dice and view your data right within your accounting solution.